Isn't the $1,500 I send you every month enough for food? The fork slipped from my fingers and clattered against the plate. A small sound, but it cut through the room like a blade. I looked up. Grandma's eyes were fixed on me, confusion and disappointment clouding her face. Silence rippled across the table. The laughter, the clinking glasses, the clatter of plates, it all vanished, like someone had flipped a switch on the birthday celebration. I clenched my hands under the table, trying to keep my voice from shaking. "What did you say, Grandma?" She leaned forward slightly, her tone careful and deliberate. "I asked if the $1,500 I send you every month is enough to cover your food. I haven't received anything, not since I started college." No one said a word, but I could feel it. Every pair of eyes bouncing between me and my parents, then back to me. 20 people at that table, and now all of them knew something I didn't. I'm Amanda, 19 years old, a sophomore at the University of Minnesota, and I had just found out the ugliest truth in my family, right in the middle of my grandma's 90th birthday dinner. Grandma had always been the only person who made me feel seen. She remembered my birthdays, mailed handwritten letters, and promised she'd help once I got into college. That promise was the only thing that kept me going during high school, through years of being ignored compared to my older brother Henry. Henry, the prodigy, the golden boy. When he turned 16, my parents bought him a brand new car. 2 years later, I got a clearance sale bike. When Henry breathed, it was an achievement. When I bled for straight B's, I got silence. But I swallowed it. I accepted being the shadow, because I had hope, because I had her. And then college came, and nothing. When I asked Mom if Grandma was okay, she exploded over the phone. "How selfish can you be? Grandma's going through financial trouble. You should be ashamed of yourself. Get a job instead of begging." So I did. I worked at a coffee shop off campus. My one meal a day came from leftovers they let employees take home. I picked up a second job writing content online. There were days when the cafe closed for holidays, and I went hungry. I remember nearly passing out one week they shut down for cleaning. My roommate Sarah was the only reason I survived. She shared food, loaned me $500 from her parents when my laptop died, a laptop I needed for both school and my writing job. Meanwhile, Henry was supposedly thriving at college, too busy with exams to come home for holidays. We rarely spoke, just the occasional vague text. Until today. Until I came back for Grandma's birthday and handed her a framed photo of us at my high school graduation. Until she looked at me with love and concern and asked the question that made the world stop spinning. And suddenly, the room got very quiet. "I want to know what's going on," Grandma said. Her voice didn't shake. "Robert, Elizabeth, explain yourselves. If you don't, I'm calling the police." My father cleared his throat. My mother's face crumpled. "Henry, he's been struggling," Dad admitted. "Gambling. It started in high school, got worse. We, we've been trying everything. Rehab, therapy, paying off debts. We thought this would help." Every word slammed into me like a punch to the chest. All those nights I couldn't afford dinner, all those shifts where I scrubbed cafe floors for minimum wage, all those weeks I blamed myself, wondering if Grandma had forgotten me. She hadn't. They stole from me. I couldn't feel my hands anymore, just the cold burn of betrayal spreading through my veins. Grandma rose from her seat. Her voice was calm, but her eyes were fire. "Everyone, please, continue with the celebration. Robert, Elizabeth, my office, now." My parents followed her like scolded children. Mom was shaking. Dad stared at the floor. And I sat there, frozen. My plate untouched, my fork still on the table, my heart pounding. How long had they been lying? How could they do this to their own daughter? And what else had they kept from me? When they closed the door to Grandma's office, I wanted to follow, to press my ear against the wood, to hear every shameful word she would fling at them. But I didn't. I stayed frozen at the dining table, numb and trembling. Tyler, my cousin, nudged my shoulder and whispered, "You okay?" I couldn't even nod. I watched the others try to keep the mood going. Someone poured more wine. Someone else made a joke too loud. But everyone's eyes kept darting toward the hallway, toward the closed door, toward me. 30 minutes later, the door opened. My parents came out first. My mother's eyes were swollen, smeared with mascara. My father didn't look at anyone. They slipped on their coats without saying goodbye. Then came Grandma. She re-entered the room like nothing had happened. "Who's ready for cake?" she asked, with a smile that fooled no one. Later, when the guests had all left and the house was finally quiet, she poured me a cup of coffee and sat across from me at the kitchen table. "I need to tell you everything I learned last night," she said. Her voice was steady, but her hands trembled slightly. She explained that she had never transferred money to me directly. She had given it to my parents, trusting them to pass it along. Over the last 2 years, she had sent $1,500 every month, along with an initial $100,000 to help with college tuition. "I thought it would make things easier for you," she said, "but you got a partial scholarship, so the total cost was only $40,000. They kept the rest." $60,000. Gone. Stolen. But the worst part was still to come. "Henry never went to college," Grandma said flatly. My coffee nearly spilled. What? They always said, Riverdale, the exams, he couldn't come home because of classes? "It was all a lie," she said, eyes hard. "They sent him away to get him away from his gambling friends. But it didn't help. He found new ones. He's been gambling online. The $80,000 I gave for his education? Gone. Debts, rehab, therapists. Nothing helped." Tears stung my eyes. My jaw locked. All this time, I thought Henry was off building his future. Thought I was the broken one, struggling, hustling, barely hanging on. But he was the one sinking, and they chose to save him by dragging me under. "I was working 2 jobs," I whispered, "skipping meals. My roommate had to pay for my laptop." Grandma reached across the table and held my hand. "I know, sweetie, and I'm so sorry. I should have checked with you directly." Her eyes softened. "But I'm fixing it now. From today on, I'll transfer $2,000 a month straight to your account. No more middlemen. You focus on school. That's your job now." For the first time in years, I felt like someone was in my corner. I stayed with her for 3 more days. We talked for hours about my classes, my friends, my dreams. She listened. She actually listened. When it was time for me to head back to school, she drove me to the bus station herself. Just before I boarded, she pressed an envelope into my hand. "Emergency fund," she said, "and don't tell me you're giving it back." Back on campus, I made one major change. I quit my freelance content writing job. With Grandma's help, I could finally just breathe. I kept the cafe gig on weekends, mostly because I liked it. The people were nice, the food was free, and I actually had time to sleep. I bought real groceries, replaced my shoes, paid Sarah back, down to the last cent. For the first time since I started college, I wasn't constantly hungry or exhausted. My grades shot up. I even joined a study group. My professor noticed. "This is excellent work, Amanda," he said after returning a paper. "Ever considered becoming a research assistant?" Before, I would have laughed. Too busy, too broke, too tired. Now, I nodded. I'd love to apply. When's the deadline? 2 months passed like that. Peaceful, focused, almost surreal. Then one afternoon, while I was in the library, someone tapped my shoulder. I turned. And there she was, Grandma, grinning like a kid. "Surprise inspection," she said, loud enough to draw a dirty look from the librarian. "Grandma," I jumped up and hugged her. "What are you doing here?" Making sure at least one of my grandchildren is actually in college. We laughed. She took me to lunch at the campus cafe. As we shared a sandwich, she dropped a bomb. I rewrote my will. I blinked. What? You're my sole heir now. I'm nearly choked on my iced tea. What? Grandma, I don't. She raised a hand. I already gave your parents over $250,000. That was their share. They weren't happy, but frankly, I don't care. It's not about need, Amanda. It's about trust. And I trust you. I couldn't speak. After years of being the afterthought, the invisible child, suddenly I was seen, valued. But a small voice inside me whispered, this won't be the end of it. Would my parents really accept being cut off? Would Henry? 1 week later, I got my answer. It was a Thursday afternoon. I had just come back from class when Sarah whispered, your parents are here. I froze in the doorway. What? In the lounge, waiting for you. She grabbed her laptop and mumbled, study session, before slipping out the back door. I took a deep breath and walked in. Dad was perched stiffly on my desk chair. Mom sat on Sarah's bed, hands folded in her lap, looking thinner than I remembered. Her eyes were shadowed, like she hadn't slept in days. Dad's hair looked grayer, his posture more hunched than usual. What do you want? I asked flatly, standing by the door. Dad cleared his throat. We need to talk to Grandma about the will. I stared at them. That's why you're here? Not even a, how are you? Just straight to what you want? Amanda, Mom began, her voice cracking, we made mistakes, but Henry needs help again. Serious help. I laughed, a short, bitter sound. And you think I should talk Grandma into giving you more money? After everything? Dad sighed. We're your parents. We raised you. You stole from me, I snapped. That money was meant for me. I worked 2 jobs. I went hungry. I thought Grandma forgot me. And you let me believe that. You're exaggerating, Mom said, waving her hand. A fire lit in my chest. Let me tell you what exaggerating looks like, I said, my voice rising. It's eating leftover pastries from cafe trash bins because I couldn't afford groceries. It's wearing the same 3 outfits for 2 years. It's crying myself to sleep because my laptop broke and I couldn't do my homework. Mom blinked, but didn't deny it. Her lip trembled. Dad tried a gentler tone. Amanda, please, just tell Grandma you've been fine, that we supported you. She'll listen to you. I stepped forward, eyes blazing. You want me to lie? After you left me to suffer while praising Henry for being too busy with exams? Mom spoke again, softly this time. He's your brother. He needs us. And I don't? I felt my voice crack. For 18 years, you've picked him, over and over again. He got a car, I got a bike. He got praise for doing the bare minimum. I got ignored even when I overachieved. He got love, I got leftovers. That's not true, Dad mumbled, but even he didn't sound convinced. Isn't it? I whispered. Be honest, for once. They didn't speak. Mom stared at the floor. He's our son, she finally said. And I'm your daughter, I shouted, tears now running down my face. She broke down, covering her face with her hands. Dad reached over and awkwardly patted her back. Amanda, try to understand, he said. Henry's problems are complicated. I do understand, I said, voice calm now, cold. I understand you chose to save him by sacrificing me. Silence fell again. Mom finally looked up. What are we supposed to do now? Henry's in trouble again. He owes money to very dangerous people. We need Grandma's help. That's not my problem. I meant it. I was shocked by how much I meant it. Mom's jaw dropped. How can you be so cold? Her words, the exact same ones she'd screamed at me when I asked about Grandma's promise. Something inside me snapped. Get out. She blinked. Amanda, get out. I don't want to see either of you again. You made your choice years ago, and now you can live with it. They left, Mom sobbing, Dad looking defeated. I sat on my bed, shaking, trying to process what had just happened. Sarah returned an hour later. One look at me, and she sat down beside me without saying a word. "They didn't even apologize," I whispered. She whistled. Unreal. I told her everything. She listened, then asked, "What are you going to do now?" I didn't even hesitate. Move forward. And I meant that too. In the weeks that followed, I threw myself into school. The difference was staggering. Without constant financial stress, I could finally focus. I bought my textbooks instead of scrambling for the library copies, ate 3 meals a day, replaced the worn-down sneakers I duct taped together last semester. My GPA jumped from a 3.1 to a 3.8. Professors started to notice. "You're sharp," my psych professor said. "Have you considered applying for a summer research stipend?" Once upon a time, I would have said no. Too busy working, too broke to take unpaid opportunities. But now? Yes, I said, surprising even myself. That weekend, Sarah burst into our room waving a flyer. "Spring break in Miami," she announced. "You're coming. No excuses." I opened my mouth to decline, then stopped. I didn't have to live like that anymore. "You know what?" I said. "I'm in." Her jaw dropped. "Seriously?" "Seriously." I booked the trip that night, with money from Grandma's fund, saved just for this. And for the first time in my life, I didn't feel guilty. But then, right before spring break, I got a call. "Amanda?" The voice was careful, measured. It was Aunt Kathy, Mom's sister. "I thought you should know," she said. "Your parents sold the house. They're renting now. The money barely covered Henry's debts. He's in rehab again." I felt a flicker of something. Sympathy? No, not quite. Maybe just closure? I hung up and stared at the wall. Should I feel something more? Later that night, I called Grandma. "I talked to Aunt Kathy," I told her. "They're struggling." "Are you okay?" she asked. I thought about it and realized the truth. "Yeah," I said. "I think I am." Spring break in Miami was something out of a dream. I had never let myself want something like that before. But there I was, standing on warm sand, the ocean breeze in my hair, laughing with Sarah and a group of her friends as we sipped overpriced drinks and took blurry selfies at sunset. I bought a swimsuit without checking the price tag. I ordered whatever I wanted at restaurants. I splurged on parasailing. And for once, I didn't feel like I had to explain myself. When we returned to campus, sunburned and glowing, I found a letter waiting in my mailbox. I knew the handwriting instantly. Mom's. I stared at it for a long time before opening it. Part of me wanted to throw it out. Part of me needed to know what it said. It was short. "Amanda, we've moved into a smaller place. The new address is below in case you ever want to visit. Henry is back in rehab. The doctors think he might have a chance this time. Your father and I have been doing a lot of thinking. We made mistakes, big ones. We can't change the past, but we want you to know we're proud of you. Love, Mom." That was it. No real apology, no acknowledgement of what they'd done, just vague regret. I showed the letter to Sarah. She rolled her eyes. "That's it?" I tucked it away in my drawer. I didn't expect anything more from them, not anymore. Classes picked up again, and I found myself thinking less and less about my parents. I had too much to focus on. I still worked weekend shifts at the cafe, not for the money now, but because I genuinely enjoyed it. I was building something of my own. Then came another surprise. Late April, Grandma visited again, this time for no particular reason. She took me to a fancy dinner off campus. We split a bottle of wine and shared dessert like old friends. "How are you really doing?" she asked as she spooned creme brulee into her mouth. I smiled. "Good, really good. I never knew life could be this uncomplicated." She nodded. "That's how it should be at your age." After a pause, I added, "Mom wrote me." Her eyebrows rose. And no real apology, just an update. Henry's in rehab again. They moved. "Are you going to respond?" I shook my head. Not now, maybe someday, but I'm not ready. That's fair, she said softly. You take all the time you need. Finals crept up, and I buried myself in textbooks. My psych professor reminded me that I was on track to qualify for the summer research grant. I doubled down, studying until my eyes ached. I wanted that opportunity, not just to prove something to others, but to myself. And then, another call. This time, the number was unknown. Hello? I answered, cautious. Amanda, the voice said. Male, hesitant, familiar. It's Henry. I sat down on a bench outside the library. I'm calling from the rehab center, he said. Part of recovery is making amends. I didn't say anything. I know what Mom and Dad did, he continued. Using your money for me. I didn't know at the time, but that doesn't make it okay. No, I said, it doesn't. I'm not asking for forgiveness, he said. I just wanted you to know that I get it now. I'm sorry for my part in it. He waited. I didn't reply right away. After we hung up, I just sat there, watching students walk past me, laughing, rushing to classes, living normal lives. And for the first time in forever, I felt like I was finally part of it. That phone call, it didn't erase what he'd done, but it was the first real apology I'd ever received from anyone in my family. I didn't know if he'd stay clean. I didn't know if my parents would ever truly understand the damage they caused. But somehow I realized it didn't matter, because I was no longer living in the shadow of their choices. I had carved out a life of my own, one that wasn't defined by scarcity, by guilt, or by silent suffering. I had friends, opportunities, a future shaped by me. And whatever happened with them from here on out, I would be okay. That summer, I started my research assistantship. It paid modestly, but more importantly, it felt like a door opening. I was working with grad students, analyzing behavioral case studies, and even assisting in developing a paper for publication. My name was listed second on the credits. For the first time, I didn't feel like an imposter in academic spaces. I felt like I belonged. One afternoon, while I was typing up notes in the lab, my phone buzzed. A text from Grandma. Dinner this weekend? Just us girls. I smiled. I had missed her. We met at a quiet bistro outside campus. She looked sharp in a dark teal jacket, her hair pinned back neatly, as always. She had a folder with her, which she placed beside her wine glass. I had a call from your Aunt Kathy last week, she said after the appetizers arrived. I raised an eyebrow. Oh? She said your parents might lose their new place. Henry's treatment is expensive, and the rehab center won't keep him without payment. I stirred my drink in silence. She asked if I'd consider helping again, Grandma said. Her voice was calm, but there was a shadow behind it. Are you? I asked, my heart already tight. I told her I'd think about it. Do you want my opinion? I asked. I do, she said, leaning forward. I took a breath. I think if you give them more money, they'll never learn. Not just Henry, them. She watched me for a long moment. Thank you, she said softly, because I needed someone to say that out loud. The next day, I got another letter. This one wasn't handwritten. It was typed, formal. Dear Amanda, we understand you've taken issue with past decisions we've made. We know we've made mistakes, but we're family, and family doesn't give up on each other. Please talk to Grandma. She listens to you. Henry needs this. We all do. Dad. No apology, just expectation. I didn't respond. Instead, I focused on my research. I read more, stayed later in the lab, talked to my professor about applying for graduate school. My future was stretching out in front of me like a map, and for the first time, I wanted to follow it. Then, one Friday night, Sarah burst into our dorm. Emergency, she said dramatically. Girls' night. No excuses, no psychology journal articles, just wine and bad movies. I laughed and surrendered. We stayed up until 3 a.m., watching horror films and painting our nails. I hadn't done anything so ordinary in so long. It felt like a rebellion. As I lay in bed later that night, buzzed on sugar and freedom, I realized something. I didn't miss them. My parents, the chaos, the manipulation, the cold silence. I missed the idea of family, but not the reality I had lived through. 2 weeks later, I got a voicemail from my mother. Her voice was shaky. "Henry's left rehab. Again. He took money from us and disappeared. We don't know where he is. Amanda, please, can we talk?" I didn't call back. I called Grandma. "I heard," I said. She sighed. "I'm done, Amanda. I truly am. I love him, but I won't bleed for him anymore." And she meant it. She closed the trust, she froze all payments, she removed them from everything legal she could. And for the first time, I watched the roles reverse. My parents spiraling, calling everyone, trying to get sympathy, but no one was buying it anymore. Not after what they did to me. Not after the truth came out. I started getting messages from old family friends. "Amanda, I had no idea what was happening. I'm so sorry. Your strength is incredible. If you ever want to talk, I'm here." Even Tyler texted. "I always thought Henry was a jerk. Didn't know it ran that deep. Good on you." It wasn't validation I needed, but it felt good, like the world had stopped believing their version of me. One night, as I was leaving the lab, I ran into Professor Dawson, my research advisor. "I heard you're applying for grad school," she said. I nodded, holding my breath. She smiled. "You're going to do great things, Amanda. I'm recommending you for the fellowship. Full ride." I blinked. "What? Seriously?" "Seriously," she said. "You've earned it." I walked home that night under a sky full of stars, feeling like anything was possible. Because I was no longer someone's afterthought. I was the main character of my own story. Fall semester arrived with a chill in the air and a confidence in my chest I hadn't felt in years. I moved into a grad student apartment, small but mine. I decorated it with warm lights and thrifted art prints. Sarah had graduated and moved to New York, but we kept in touch almost daily. Every time she called, she ended with, "Still proud of you, you badass." I liked who I was becoming. One Saturday afternoon, while grocery shopping, I bumped into Aunt Kathy. I hadn't seen her since Grandma's birthday. She looked thinner, paler. "Amanda?" she said, hesitant. I gave a polite smile. "Hi." She hesitated. "Your mom's been struggling." "I'm sure." "She talks about you, a lot more than she used to." I raised an eyebrow. "Does she admit what she did?" Aunt Kathy winced. "Not exactly, but I think she's starting to understand." I said nothing. She shifted. "Henry's gone quiet. No one's heard from him in weeks. She's afraid something's happened." "I hope he gets help," I said, "but that's not on me anymore." Kathy nodded. "I told her that, but she still hopes you'll come around." That night, I sat in my new apartment, tea in hand, staring at my phone. I thought about calling, just to check, just to satisfy that small voice in my heart that still craved a mother's love. But I didn't. Instead, I opened my laptop and worked on my graduate application essay. It asked, "Describe a moment that changed your life." I wrote, "The moment I found out my family had lied to me for years wasn't the moment that broke me, it was the moment that built me. For the first time, I understood that survival isn't just about enduring, it's about choosing who you become after. I chose clarity. I chose to build a life rooted in truth, and I want to help others do the same." As I typed, tears blurred my vision, not from pain, but from pride. 2 weeks later, I received an acceptance letter from the graduate program, along with a full fellowship. I called Grandma first. Her voice cracked. "I knew you'd get it. I just knew it." She mailed me a handwritten letter the next day, folded around a check with the words, "For something silly and unnecessary," in the memo line. I bought myself the most ridiculous pair of red heels I'd ever seen. That winter, I didn't go home. I spent the holidays with a friend's family. We drank cocoa and played board games, and I laughed so hard my ribs hurt. It was the first Christmas in my life where I didn't feel like a guest in someone else's home. I felt wanted. In January, another envelope arrived. This one wasn't from my mother. It was from Henry. Inside was a torn sheet of notebook paper. Amanda, I'm in Arizona now, working at a used bookstore, trying to stay clean. I know I'm the reason you had to grow up too fast. I wish I could undo it, but I can't. So I'll just say this. I'm sorry for everything. I hope one day you'll believe I mean that. Henry. I stared at the letter for a long time. Then I folded it carefully and tucked it in my drawer, not as forgiveness, but as a record. Proof that some people do try to change. But I didn't write back. Not yet. Maybe not ever. Because the truth is, I wasn't angry anymore. I was just done. Done being the fixer, the forgiver, the forgotten one. I didn't need closure. I had something better. Peace. Spring returned, soft and slow, as if the world itself was letting me breathe. I was thriving in grad school, presenting at seminars, mentoring undergrads, and even co-authoring my first academic paper. My professor called it a perspective sharpened by lived truth. That made me smile. One rainy Tuesday afternoon, I received an unexpected email. Langford Family Foundation Scholarship, finalist interview invitation. I blinked at the screen. This was one of the most competitive fellowships in the country. I didn't even remember applying. Turns out, Professor Dawson had submitted my name herself. The interview panel consisted of 4 people, 2 professors, a dean, and the foundation's director, a polished, silver-haired woman in her 60s. "We were deeply moved by your essay," she said, flipping through a folder. "The part about choosing who you become after betrayal, it stayed with me." That made me smile. One rainy Tuesday afternoon, I received an unexpected email. Langford Family Foundation Scholarship, finalist interview invitation. I blinked at the screen. This was one of the most competitive fellowships in the country. I didn't even remember applying. Turns out, Professor Dawson had submitted my name herself. The interview panel consisted of 4 people, 2 professors, a dean, and the foundation's director, a polished, silver-haired woman in her 60s. "We were deeply moved by your essay," she said, flipping through a folder. "The part about choosing who you become after betrayal, it stayed with me." They asked about my research, my goals, and finally, about resilience. I answered honestly. You learn how strong you are when no one comes to save you, and then you start saving yourself. 2 weeks later, I got the call. I had won. A full scholarship, a year of research abroad, a spot on the Foundation's Young Scholars Board. I dropped my phone in shock and screamed so loud my neighbor knocked on the door. That night, I FaceTimed Grandma. She cried before I could even finish the sentence. "I wish your grandpa could have seen this," she said. "He would have been so proud." "Are you kidding?" I said. "He's up there bragging about me to every angel who listen." She laughed through her tears. "You've come so far, Amanda, and you did it all yourself." Not all by myself, I wanted to say. I had her, I had Sarah, I had every hard moment that shaped me. But mostly, I had me. 2 days later, I walked into a boutique and bought a dress. Not thrifted, not discounted, full price. Emerald green, satin, powerful. The next week, I wore it to the Langford Foundation Gala. I stood in front of a ballroom filled with academics, philanthropists, and dignitaries, and I gave a speech. There was a time when I was invisible, when my voice was ignored, my presence overlooked, when I had to choose between buying lunch or printing a paper. But that time taught me who I am, and it taught me this. Resilience isn't just survival, it's resistance. It's standing up in rooms that tried to erase you and saying, I'm still here, and I matter. Thank you for seeing me. Thank you for helping me keep going. The applause lasted longer than I expected. Afterward, several people came up to me. One woman said she wished her daughter had heard that speech. Another man asked if I'd consider speaking at his nonprofits conference. It was surreal. As the night ended, I stepped outside for air. The city lights glowed around me, soft and golden. And then I saw them. Across the street, standing near a bus stop, were my parents. Mom wore a worn-out coat. Dad looked older than I remembered. They weren't dressed for galas. They didn't try to come over. They just watched. And I watched them. There was no hate in me, no fire, just a strange, steady calm. They had made their choices, and I had made mine. I turned back toward the entrance, heels clicking on the stone. The valet opened the door for me like I belonged, and I did. I belonged to this life now, one I had built with grit, not privilege, with truth, not illusion. Inside, the orchestra started playing again. As I stepped back into the ballroom, I smiled. Let them watch. Let the world see the girl they once ignored, standing tall in emerald silk with nothing to hide. Because I had nothing to prove, and everything ahead of me.